adapt to the change. And technology, I was playing around with a little Panasonic camera that is fully, a lot of people actually use it for doing commercial work, for commercials and stuff like that. And you're looking at this little camera. It's like half the size of a SLR or DLR camera of 2 years ago or 3 years ago. It is capable of motion picture quality. So I mean, and it just keeps improving fastly now. So I guess, for a lot of people doing filming and making movies, I mean, it's a godsend because, you just get a group of those cameras and, you can do a lot with it. And you don't, film is so expensive because at one point, the TV show The Fugitive, not the original, but the remake that was done in the early 2000s, they hired me on to be their staff photographer for the show. But as soon as they hired me, I got the notice a week later the show was canceled. So that was the only connection I ever had to, TV shows or movies or anything. Big disappointment for me.
Well, I guess when one door closes, a whole bunch more doors open. That's kind of how I look at things. You just never know what might have happened if you had stayed there and worked on it. But it's kind of hard to get into the Hollywood world on set, especially as a camera person, so you're in a good position.
Yeah.
It's a fun business. I've worked on a ton of stuff out there, and I kind of miss it, but I love being here in Florida. My wife and I were shooting, we're right in the middle, in fact, we're filming tomorrow. We're shooting another scene in our movie that we're doing, Horror Scope.
What's that? Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I bought the camera that I'm using for this film in Hollywood, right at Sammy's Camera on La Brea and Melrose. I'm not plugging them really. I'm just saying, and that's probably the biggest camera store that I know of in Hollywood. Everyone gets their stuff there, and they have everything.
Well,
you can go in there, and it's a 3-story building, and they have all of the camera equipment, everything that you could want.
Oh, yeah. I've bought and stuff through the years from them. So, I mean, I'd rather have bought, from them than some of the places out of New York. I hate to say New York, but, I mean, I've had some bad experiences buying from some camera companies out of New York. So, but with Sammy's, I always call them up and say, hey, I need this and this. Do you have it? Do you have it used? Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, send it to me. Hey, it looked like new. I was always happy, so.
Yeah, I got my Canon there, and I got my GoPro there.
Uh-huh.
That's what we're shooting, Horoscope. That's the movie we're shooting right now. We're shooting it. I'm using 3 cameras. We're using 3 cameras, and we got our sound equipment there, too. We got the H6 Zoom recorder, and we're using the Canon 7D, and the GoPro Hero Plus, and the iPhone.
Uh-huh.
And so usually when I set up a scene now, if I can, I work it from 3 different angles at the same time, because the GoPro is such a wide angle, but I can shoot that at like 2.7K.
Uh-huh.
But I'm shooting really the whole thing at 30 frames a second. That way I can render. I'm going to output it at 30 frames a second or 29 frames a second, and I'm going to output it at 24 frames a second. That way I can have one look like feature, and then if it goes to TV, there's a TV 30 frames a second version. Because TV, you usually use 30 frames a second, and then feature films,
it's about 24.
24. Yeah.
Wow. That's what I mean. It's amazing, that, I used to know another person years ago that was a Hollywood producer and a cameraman, and then he went into producing. In fact, he actually came up with the idea for Fox TV, a spy show back in the early 2000s. It didn't last very long, unfortunately. But I was looking at all of his equipment, and, it was massive. And even when they were doing The Fugitive, when they introduced me, the people on the cast and their cameraman that did the video work, I mean, that stuff was huge. It's just nowadays you can take the stuff and you can kind of even, get the crowds of people watching what you're doing, like in the past.
Oh, yeah. All over Hollywood, you always see these yellow signs up and down the streets, with little code letters on there for whatever show's filming. You can go up and down all around Hollywood and down the valley everywhere, and there's always something filming. And there's usually people looking around. I've worked on a lot of different sets where, in fact, my wife was working on Scandal one day. She was playing a news reporter, and Kerry Washington came out and stepped out onto the top step of the building she was coming out of, and my wife was, they were getting ready to shoot, and she's supposed to put the microphone in her face, and then before they started rolling, she was telling the producers, "Hey, we got those people over there that aren't supposed to be here taking pictures, trying to figure out what's going on." And so there's always kind of crowds that you have to look for. I guess those guys have to deal with trying to get on set or crash the set, especially if you're shooting out on location.
Well, that's like, I was actually managing a couple of camera stores when they used downtown Tacoma for a lot of the scenes for The Fugitive. And I couldn't resist. They were filming right across from our store. So I got my camera out there and I started taking pictures. And actually the star of the show and the director and producer that was there, they all come walking over, and after they yelled at me for 5 minutes, they said, "Hey, do you have any work, anything you've done?" They looked at my work and they go, "We want to hire you." But boy, I got yelled at like you wouldn't believe.
That's hilarious.
Hey.
Yeah, see how one thing can turn in from a tragedy into a miracle, I guess.
Oh, I was so ecstatic for a week. I went home bragging to my wife, "Hey, look, we're going to have to move. We're going to have to do some traveling and all that stuff." And then a week later, they called me up and said, "We're going to have to renege. The show was just canceled." So,
yeah.
Oh, well.
That's a shame.
Life goes on.
What did you have? You were out there with a camera?
Yeah, I was out there taking a camera. I had pictures with a camera with a long lens, and it kind of like was disrupting, the actors, feel of the
I'll
scene.
tell you, I've learned a lot about in Hollywood. Half the battle is just showing up. If you show up, good things will happen.
So this new and I don't want you to give it away, but this new movie you're filming, what's that kind of the theme about that?
Well, the theme about that movie, the moral of the story is don't sell your soul to the devil for fame and fortune. It's called Horror Scope. It's about this young musical band of these 5 kids, 2 girls and 3 boys. They're all like 7 to 12 years old, 13 years old. And how old is Veronica? She's 12? So 7 to 12 years old, 8 to 12 years old, and they want to be famous. They want to be there, and they're a musical band. They want to be like YouTube sensations, like Justin Bieber. So the main girl, the oldest girl, she's kind of watching music videos on YouTube, and she sees these YouTube videos about how some of these Hollywood stars have kind of done these blood ceremonies and sold their soul to Lucifer for fame and fortune. So she convinces the band to have a seance, and they want to sell their soul to the devil, but they don't know how to do it. So they find out that this guy, Aleister Crowley, from back in the 30s and 40s, he was like the wickedest man in the world, and he knew all of the magic words and how to conduct ceremonies and channel spirits. So they decide to have a seance and bring his spirit out and see if they could sell their soul to Satan or Lucifer, the light bearer, through Aleister Crowley. And then from there, it turns tragic. So I won't give away the ending, but it's a tragedy, but it's also a lesson on, one of the lines in the movie that the father says to the girl is like, "Look, just work really, really hard and you'll do well, you'll succeed."
Oh, wow.
And that's one of the messages is there, but don't sell your soul, because bad things can happen.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it sounds interesting.
So it's kind of a horror, and it's also, spooky. It's a little spooky, and it's also action. And these kids are really good little actors. I was surprised. It's tough working with kids, though, because it's hard to keep their attention span.
Yeah, I know that. I have 8 kids, so I know how that is. So, I mean, it's really hard. So my hat's off to you on that one.
Oh, yeah. They've gotten into a couple of, fights with each other on set, because they're, they know each other. Some of them are brother and sister, cousins, good, friends. They're all I remember the very first day of shooting, I thought, I was like 5 seconds away from just saying, you know what, we're not going to be able to shoot this movie. I'm just going to have to either recast it or I'm just going to go on to the next script because this isn't working. Because the two girls in the scene, the very first day of shooting, were literally like had a fight, and they was crying, and the parents were yelling, and it was rough. I don't know how I didn't walk away, but I'm glad I didn't because we're on tomorrow's our 10th day of filming, and it's going well now. And I guess we got the bad stuff out of the way first as far as tempers on set.
Oh, so you didn't have any of them where they said, I'm going to quit, I'm not going to do it, and walk off temporarily and stuff like that?
Yeah. That day, one of the girls, she just said, I'm not doing this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to make this movie. I'm sick of this. I don't want to work with her. I hate her. And then one of the parents said, if you don't shut your mouth, I'm going to smack you in the face and you're never coming back to my house again. And then the father came in and was yelling at the kid, and it was a nightmare for a little while. But we got past that moment, and then we finished the scene, and it worked out okay.
Okay. How far are you into the movie at this point?
Tomorrow's our 10th day of filming, and we probably have about 20 more days of filming, depending on if we can meet our schedule and get shot what we plan on shooting each day. I'm hoping to be done because these kids have school, and so I have to schedule around their school. And I've gotten a lot of, I've been knocking out as many day scenes as I can so that I can get to the night scenes as quickly as, I want to save all the night scenes for where I can shoot them as they get home from school, so I can, shoot maybe from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. and be done, that way I can shoot during the week instead of just on the weekends, because there are busy kids that got gymnastics and baseball and different sports that they play and piano lessons, and so it's a scheduling nightmare a little bit, but my wife does a really good job at scheduling, and so we work well together.
Yeah. Now, so how long have you been acting and directing?
Well, I started acting in grade school, really. I started doing plays in school, and then I acted some in college a little bit. I went to a couple of different colleges and did a little bit of theater there. And then I took a break for a while when I got into the Department of Defense. But I was always either playing drums or singing in a band and also playing baseball. I could play college baseball as a pitcher. So I was always involved in some type of performing type of a thing. And then with directing, I kind of got managed. I learned a lot of management skills while I was working for the Department of Defense and really got into directing. I started directing theater and and I was a casting director before I became really like a full-on director. And I started probably directing theater almost 11 years ago. And so as far as film directing, movie directing, or even like reality show directing and casting directing, I got into that about like 9 years ago, and producing. So for about the last 5 to 10, 11 years or so, I've been directing and providing direction, working with actors, telling them what to do, setting up scenes, things like that.
But kind of curious, I mean, to go from the DOA or the DOD and then go, into acting or back into acting, I mean, that's what I kind of find fascinating. I mean, how many years were you with the DOD?
I had a top secret clearance for 13 years. I went into the Army in 1993. And then I got out of the Army in November 2001. And then right from there, I became a contractor and started working on private government contracts, for private companies on military contracts from the end of 2001 to